Oklahoma returns to Norman after a brutal 2-game stretch to face West Virginia Saturday. Here's a quick breakdown of each team's current status, keys to victory, and final prediction for the game. Crunch time matters, and unfortunately the offense has struggled in key moments since Red River. Now, Dillon Gabriel did bounce back from a bit of a rough game last week, throwing for nearly 350 yards and a touchdown. It didn't feel like he had full command of the offense like he did earlier in the season. He threw a pick on a horrible throw while getting hit to open the second half, and fumbled twice, although I'd argue the center was to blame for one. I thought he would do damage with his legs, but he never really had the chance. Regression has been a theme of this team the past 3 weeks, and Gabriel has regressed from being a Heisman candidate to more of what we saw last year. The run game drastically improved. Sawchuk got going early with a huge touchdown run, and Tawi Walker came in spurts in the second half and played well too. Between the two of them, they averaged 8 yards per carry. And if you told me that before the game, I would have assumed Oklahoma won a blowout. Barnes got put in the game just to fumble the ball in a weird direct snap situation where he really should have just kept the ball instead of trying to give it back to DG. He never really got a chance after that. The offensive line did a great job of creating holes for both backs to run through and protected Gabriel well through the majority of the game. For the second straight week, Oklahoma has lost a game where I feel like the O-line did their job. You look at the receivers, 3 false starts, but Oklahoma had 3 receivers with at or near 100 yards. Stoops had 134, where we wasted a career day by him. Baruch had 98 and Anderson had 92. But somehow the Sooners put up only 24 points. In fact, the offense had almost 500 total yards. So what was the issue? Get cute with the play calling, results in a fumble. DG drops a dime, wide receiver drops the ball. Bubble screen for a loss of 6 on 3rd down that results in a missed long field goal attempt. 2nd and 13 late, running QB option. The momentum the offense would build was too easily stopped by players going down with injuries on the defensive side of the ball. It just felt disjointed. Not calling timeouts near the end of the half to try to get the ball back and score. Just bad plays at inopportune times during the game. You can play great 95% of the time, but that 5% will come back to get you. In my mind, a few things stand out. 3 turnovers, 5 if you include going 0 of 2 on 4th down. It's tough to overcome those. Lebby calling a play that is short of the line to gain on 4th down with the game in the balance to the sideline when the middle of the field has been an area of success all year in the pass game. That's just inexcusable, and with the down and distance, Stoops has got to run that route to the sticks. Finally, the missed PI in the end zone, which was eerily similar to a missed call last time the Sooners were in Stillwater. That call didn't lose Oklahoma the game. What did was the Sooners' inability to finish drives and take advantage of the momentum when the defense gave it to them. The situational play calling and decision making was poor for the 3rd straight game, and now the Sooners are on a 2-game losing streak and out of the college football playoff race, likely out of the Big 12 title race too. It looked like it may be a long night for the defense early. Along the defensive line, things were similar to the game against Kansas. 2 weeks ago in Lawrence, 3 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. Last week in Stillwater, 3 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. This is a defense that thrived early on in the year with their ability to generate TFLs and bring pressure. But Bowman had no problem picking apart the secondary, especially early in the game. OSU targeted Gentry Williams early, who was playing banged up, and the Pokes' top 2 receivers had their best games of the year. The secondary didn't allow a score through the air or too many backbreaking plays, but the times they did were at key moments in the game. The defense held Ollie Gordon to just 137 yards and 2 touchdowns, which was actually a win considering the tear he had been on, but keep in mind he was also banged up for part of the game as well. The team also played well on 4th downs, limiting OSU to just 1 of 4. However, the one that was converted resulted in a touchdown drive for the Pokes. Injuries have certainly played a role on the defensive side of the ball. The top 4 tacklers last week all posted season highs, including Kip Lewis, who did an excellent job replacing Danny Stutzman. However, it's clear that the defense just doesn't have the same edge that it did the first 7 games of the year. Despite giving up nearly 500 yards, the majority of the game the defense played well and gave the offense plenty of chances to go out and win the game. Unfortunately, again, when it mattered most, with the game on the line in the 4th quarter, the defense allowed a 97-yard touchdown drive that included 4 chunk plays of 10 or more yards and 4 penalties. They responded well after that, forcing a field goal on a short field and a punt, but the long game-winning drive proved costly and reminded me a lot of the 2022 Sooners. In fact, the performance by the whole team and coaching staff screams 2022. and that's a problem. A much improved Neil Brown-led West Virginia team visits Norman on the back of a 2-game winning streak. The narrative about the West Virginia offense is starkly opposite of Oklahoma's. The Mountaineers have scored 151 points in the last 4 games, the highest total under Coach Brown in Big 12 play. And that offense is led by junior quarterback Garrett Green, who had his breakout game last year against the Sooners. Green may not be the most accurate quarterback, but he does a good job of taking care of the football, only throwing 2 interceptions on the season compared to his 10 touchdowns. He also has 8 rushing touchdowns this year. As a reminder, last season he ran all over OU's defense to the tune of 119 and 2 scores. And he didn't even start that game. He may not be the most talented quarterback in the Big 12, but he has the tools to give the defense fits in Norman. It's no secret that the ground is where things start for the Mountaineers offense, who last week against BYU extended their streak of having at least 140 yards rushing to 13 straight games, most among Power 5 schools. Similar to Kansas, they have 2 backs that can give teams trouble in big bruiser CJ Donaldson and freshman Jaheim White. White had a career day last week rushing for nearly 150 yards, while Donaldson has carried the brunt of the load, nearly tripling White in carries, and has scored a touchdown in all but 1 game this season. The Sooners are going to need to improve in the tackling department this week if they want to bring down the 6'1", 238-pound back. When it comes to receivers, there isn't a lot that jumps out of the page. West Virginia sits last in the Big 12 in pass yards per game at just over 200. Senior North Carolina State transfer Devin Carter leads the team in yards with 414, while 6'7" LSU transfer tight end Cole Taylor is also a threat in the pass game, leading the team in receptions. Redshirt freshman Hudson Clement emerged as a threat, leading the team in receiving touchdowns, catching one once every 3 receptions. He hasn't seen the field since October 12th due to injury, but may be good to go against the Sooners, and if so, is a big play threat. The offensive line returned all their starters from last year, which has provided some continuity that has led to success for the Mountaineers. Guard Doug Nestor was banged up and did not play last week. His status remains unknown currently. Unlike the Sooners, the West Virginia offense has been on a roll as of late, averaging nearly 38 points per game in their last 4, including nearly 600 yards of total offense and 336 rushing yards last week against BYU. Momentum is on their side, and they hope to use that to crush OU's spirit in Norman. Last year's defense was an absolute disaster for the Mountaineers, finishing next to last in the Big 12 in points allowed and pass defense, and dead last in interceptions. The defensive turnaround has been a big part of what has led to the success of the team so far this year. While they aren't lights out, they are much improved. The team sits at 4th in the conference in yards allowed and 6th in points, allowing just over 24 points per game to compare to nearly 33 last year. Defensive lineman Sean Martin hasn't had the statistical impact he had last season along the front, but is a veteran leader of the group. The leading tackler from last season, linebacker Lee Kapagwa, also leads the team in tackles and holds a Stutzman-like position for a defensive unit that saw a lot of turnover in the offseason. The secondary has already more than doubled their total interceptions from last year, including Minnesota transfer Beanie Bishop Jr.'s team-leading 4 takeaways, tied for 8th nationally. Oh, and by the way, the Mountaineers are coming off of one of their most dominant defensive performances of the season as well, holding BYU to under 300 yards and 3 of 14 on 3rd and 4th downs. The group as a whole has improved tremendously and will look to put on a similar performance to last year's in Morgantown, where they held the Sooners to just 20 points in a win. What was a weakness of this Oklahoma team has turned into a strength over the last 2 weeks. The Sooners should lean on the legs of Tawi Walker and Gavin Sawchuk against the Mountaineers, who allowed Eric Gray to trample them with over 200 yards last year. It isn't 2022 anymore, so stop playing like it. This Sooner team needs to reflect back to the first 7 games of the year and stop playing like last year's squad, or we could be looking at the first home loss of the season. The last 2 weeks, penalties have led to touchdown drives that ended up being deciding factors in losses, whether it's false starts, pass interferences while in position, or coaches losing their cool on the sidelines. The team needs to play more disciplined this week. If they don't, expect West Virginia to make them pay for the 3rd time in a row. This was a key for OSU and is a key this week as well. The expectation is that the Sooners will key in on the run and try to contain Green from doing work with his legs, which should open the pass game. If Green improves on his accuracy, he is likely to put up the best numbers he has had all season against Oklahoma. Although the West Virginia defense has improved, I don't expect them to be able to stifle this Oklahoma offense. If they can force the Sooners into going forward on 4th or attempting field goals, OU might find a way to beat themselves. Dillon Gabriel hasn't been himself lately, or maybe he has, depending on your perspective. Pressuring him and forcing him to try to beat the defense with his arm may be the recipe for success for the Mountaineers. Last week, I said my confidence in the Oklahoma offense, defense, special teams, coaching, you name it, was at an all-time low. Guess what? It's even lower this week. To be honest, I want to pick West Virginia to win this game. They have all the tools necessary to beat Oklahoma at home. However, after 3 straight stinkers, a night game in Norman finally gets things going. Oklahoma wins a tight one 28-24. And if they don't, then start heating up. Speaking of heat, check out this video here ranking teams in the new expanded SEC. Spoiler alert, I may have been wrong. As always, have a great day and see y'all at the next one.